Emily Freeman is a dating and love coach who empowers driven men to go from confused to confident in their love lives.
If you are questioning if she's going to like you, if you're worried about getting rejected, if you're more concerned with her response versus going after what you want, you're going to get stuck in your head. So this requires you to get out of your head.
She has successfully helped dozens of CEOs, physicians, entrepreneurs, and high-performing executives and professionals to unblock limiting beliefs around dating and step into their most empowered selves and get the woman of their dreams.
People often use physical connection to avoid emotional connection, and that was the first thing that came to mind. Is that what's happening with the hookup culture?
Emily, as a dating coach, I think one of the things that is crucial for men, we'll speak to men here, about initiating a conversation that could transpire onto a brand new relationship is that first approach. And at the moment, I'd say 99% of those first approaches are happening online.
Yeah.
What sort of guidelines or insights could you offer these men to create a successful approach for a woman?
Sure. So before I go into the different ways to approach, the first thing that you want to consider and really think about is your energy, right? So what state of mind are you in before approaching her, whether it be online or in person? Because if you are questioning if she's going to like you, if you're worried about getting rejected, if you're more concerned with her response versus going after what you want, you're going to get stuck in your head and you're not going to be able to be as free flowing, as flirtatious, as witty as you would normally be if you were more comfortable. So this requires you to get out of your head and into your body, which for a lot of men can feel a little bit confusing because you're really taught and programmed to be analytical, right? That is the masculine energy. So for any core masculine men, it can be a little bit confusing to understand, wait, so I'm not supposed to think about what to say. I'm supposed to just say it. But I always give the example of like, when a comedian is on stage, they're not thinking about the joke, they're feeling into the joke, right? So it really is that gut impulse, that first thing that you're thinking about. And so when it comes to approaching, if you are stuck in your head around it, what I always tell my clients to do is to think about shooting from the hip. So what's the first thing that you want to say to her? Now, sometimes it's not always appropriate, right? And so we got to scale it back a little bit, but it's important to get in touch with, okay, what is it that you actually want to say? And now why is it that you're not saying it? Is it truly because maybe it wouldn't put you in the best light, or you don't feel like it's appropriate for not knowing each other, or is it that you aren't trusting your initial gut instinct either? So when approaching a woman, it is so important to get in touch with that initial gut instinct, because what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to feel into her profile or even feel into her energy in person. And so when you're looking at a woman's profile online, it's important to look at, okay, what is she really all about, right? What are the underlying sort of feelings that I'm getting from looking at her pictures, from reading her prompts? And you want to make sure that what you're saying isn't a paragraph, and it's also not just, hey, how's it going? But that it has some sort of personalization to it with her. And the same thing can be true in person. Instead of saying, hey, how's it going today? You can walk up to her and be like, you can really pull off those boots, right? Which may or may not go over. She's like, wait, are you interested in me? But it is something that you're noticing the small details. I think it's also important, especially online. In person, so let's start with online, because online you can be a little bit more bold with what you want to say, because you both know that you are there to date, right? The intention is already clear. So you have some more leeway to be flirtatious, to have some banter, right? I had a client who was looking at a woman who she had this picture of her in on a catwalk, and he, you know, was going to say something asking her about why she was on it. And I was like, why don't you say like, wow, you really like can work that catwalk. Like you look great in blue or something like that. And to him, it was like, wait, I can actually say something like that. And you absolutely can, because women are going to, if she's attracted to you, right, first and foremost. So if she does match with you, she's saying she's attracted to what she's seen so far. It shows a little bit of boldness. It shows that you're willing to put yourself out there. And she does take it as a compliment, right? So women are putting up photos that they do feel good in. And when you notice that she feels good in her skin and that she's owning her energy, right? It's not, oh man, like you look beautiful on that catwalk. It's, you can really work it, right? Two different energies. So I know I'm diving into a lot right now. I hope people are taking notes.
It's all good. It's all gold.
But yeah, in person, you really want it to just feel organic. And the way to allow it to feel organic is to remember you're still qualifying her. You're not walking up to her already knowing you're going to get her number. You're walking up to her to see if you actually want to, right? Her beauty, her presence caught your attention. And when you're going up to her, you want to actually get information from her to know if she's actually available and single, to see what it feels like to talk to her, if she's warm, if she's open, for you to decide if you actually want to ask for her number or not. So by already like taking away the expectation that this is an approach, you can go up to her and be able to say like, okay, we're on the same playing field and we're both getting to know each other right now. And, you know, usually before you approach a woman, it can always be great to do a little setup, right? Where you see if she'll catch your eye contact back, maybe she'll smile back at you. And if she is already doing those things, then you know that she's also attracted to you and interested in you. So then you are going up to her to say, okay, let's see if we actually want to have a conversation, an elongated conversation together. That doesn't mean you have to sit there and talk to her for 10 minutes, especially if you're busy, like you're on your way to somewhere or she's on her way somewhere. Let's say it's a coffee shop in the morning, but you want to just give it a little bit of, you know, back and forth to then decide, hey, you know, I'm in a hurry right now. I'm so sorry to cut us short. I would love to continue this conversation. Can I get your number?
Nice.
Yeah.
You set it up for the next conversation, for the next date. So the next engagement. And yeah, that you just highlighted something there in terms of the approach of the woman. For a lot of men, the woman is on a pedestal and they're trying to get her instead of having the perception that this woman would be lucky to have me in her life. Maybe that's a bit too bold, but
but it's true. You're both lucky if you find each other.
Yeah, that's what I find from a lot of men who struggle to talk to women. I had a question about that on my Instagram stories over the weekend, and that was my sort of response, that he's placing this woman on a pedestal, or placing women on pedestals, instead of seeing them as, look, you're wonderful human beings, all women, but they're also a human being who's got emotions, feelings, who wants to receive love and affection and attention. And you can meet her on that level as opposed to trying to meet her on some fantasy level that you have her on. That it's almost like a huge achievement for you to get anywhere near her. So, and it creates a massive struggle in terms of actually being able to engage with the woman, and then you're overthinking it. You're thinking, oh, what do I need to say? How do I need to approach this? And of course, as you said, you get stuck in your head. I think that's very useful advice there in terms of feeling instead of thinking, and paying attention to the woman, as you mentioned there, but the catwalk, that he's actually paid attention to her photo. He's actually looked at her instead of just swiping and then sending her a message of, oh, hey, sexy, how's it going?
Right.
So it's something very different, something very unique, and that's obviously going to catch her attention as well. A very different message from somebody who's actually looked at her profile, as opposed to someone's just swiped and sent a message. It sort of differentiates you from the rest of them, because chances are 99% of the other guys are just sending her a message of, hey, sexy, hey, beautiful, how's it going? So it separates you from the crowd, which gives you a better chance of pursuing a relationship or a date with her. So
Mm-hmm.
then if we were to take it to the next stage in terms of a dating scenario, what would be some of the guidelines that you would offer the men when it comes to that first date, which is so crucial? Just like perhaps the first engagement you would have with somebody, how that sort of becomes ingrained in your head as as a thorough experience in terms of who this person is as you move through life and engage with them in the future. That first date is extremely important. So what's some of the guidelines that you would give to the guys when they're going on this first date?
Mm-hmm. So a couple of do's for first date is to remember to lead the process through the first date. So it's not to say that women don't have their own opinions or can't make their own decisions. But when a man shows up and leads the date and has it all set out, that allows her to not have to think about those things. And so what it does is it puts her more in her feminine energy. So I spoke about this really briefly before, but we all have masculine and feminine energies within us. The masculine, right, is that thinking, the analyzing, the doing. The feminine is the nurturing, the playful, the intuitive, the creative. It's actually where you flirt, right? Is in the feminine, right? Getting into your body. And so when she is not having to decide what restaurant to go to or to decide which table to sit at, it's not to say that she wouldn't be able to do that. More so when it's already taken care of, one, it shows your leadership capabilities in a relationship, your ability to make decisions and your confidence and trust in yourself to make them. And then it also allows her to just enjoy getting to know you, right? So it takes some of the pressure off of her shoulders as well too. And so really important to think about, okay, setting up the time, where are you going, right? And allowing her a couple of days to know where you're going if you can, because women in general, not every single woman, but a lot of women like to know that the date is actually going to happen and where they're going to go. You know, we have a lot of different outfits to choose from. At least I did. And so, you know, it is fun to anticipate the date and to also know that there's some thought being put into it, right? That the man is actually thinking through it and going, what would be fun for us to do together? Another thing to think about is what type of first date is fun for you? Because if you're trying to guess exactly the type of first date that she wants, you're going to drive yourself nuts and you're going to put way too much pressure on yourself and you're going to start overthinking it because you don't know her yet. You've literally just met her. You may have not even met her in person if you met online. So you definitely want to live from your desires. One, this shows that you prioritize yourself and you have strong boundaries. And two, you actually get to see if you guys share a common interest in a sense, right? Does she like to do something more casual? Does she like to do something more upscale? Like, what do you like? And then attract a woman that's also going to enjoy and or appreciate what you enjoy as well too. Especially if you're doing the planning, it is okay to have that desire to also enjoy the date and do something you enjoy. Now, the other thing to think about through this is low investment first date, especially if you've met online, you haven't had a conversation with this person. You know, you may have had a few back and forth. So you've seen some pictures of her. Maybe you've even followed each other on Instagram. You still don't know what it's going to feel like to be on that date. You don't know how it's going to go. So especially if it's from a dating app, you want to think of it as just the first meeting. Yes. Is there romantic intent? Absolutely. Take the pressure off of yourself. Keep it to under 90 minutes. Enjoy yourself. Have it be something that's casual, like a cup of coffee, some drinks, you know, like go and watch the sunset somewhere if it's warm enough out, or bundle up and do it. Get out in nature, you know, do something that is low investment and also in public, right? Most women are going to be way more comfortable meeting you somewhere where they know there's going to be other people, especially if they've met you online. Now, a couple of things on the date is you want to ask thoughtful questions, but you don't want to make it an interview. Mm-hmm. So you want to give her the opportunity to feel seen and heard. So this looks like active listening, repeating back some of the things that she told you, asking her even deeper questions based on what she told you. And you also want to talk about yourself and have it come back to you. So let's say she's talking all about herself and she's not asking you any questions back. Instead of asking her another question, elaborate on what she said, but about how you relate to it. If you can't relate to it, tell her, oh my gosh, I can't relate to that at all. I've actually done X, Y, and Z, or you wouldn't believe that I did this, right? You're opening up about yourself. So when you open up about yourself, she relaxes and she feels good about opening up herself as well too. This doesn't mean you need to air all of your dating history or what scares you at night or anything like that, right? You can be vulnerable by simply just talking and sharing about your experiences. And these can be at any level of depth. But on the first date, you don't need to get to a level of depth. This is somebody you want to make sure you can trust to open up to, right? Someone who's emotionally available is open about their experiences, but they're discerning about who they share them with. And you are still qualifying her to make sure she's a safe space to be able to receive all those pieces of you. And she does the same. So those are some things to remember around the first date. I think it's also important to recognize that if you're romantically interested in her, you should treat her like you're romantically interested in her, right? That's what turns some just dinner with a friend into a date, is a little bit of appropriate physical touch, some flirtatious banter, make eye contact, giving her a little tease or a hard time about something. And then if it is appropriate, potentially at the end of the date, if you want to try to give her a first kiss, definitely you want to read into that a little bit and see if it seems like the right time. I do want to caveat that, guys, just because she doesn't kiss you on the first date does not mean she's not interested. In fact, she might not kiss you because she is interested and sees this as potentially going somewhere and wants to make sure that she's emotionally regulated herself, right? With physical intimacy, women and men can respond in different ways, but generally women can become more, their emotions get greater when they have physical intimacy. So just because she doesn't kiss you or engage in any sort of physical contact, aside from like letting you maybe put your arm around her, hold her hand, or just touch her hand over the table, whatever it is, or put your hand on, her arm while you're talking. If she doesn't kiss you, it's not an indication. In fact, I know it's confusing, but sometimes women can kiss you at the end of the date and also not want a second date.
You women are just
I
very
just opened
confusing.
I might have just opened a can of worms. But I think a lot of men do measure a woman's level of interest based on her level of physical intimacy with them. And that's just not, it's just not always the case when it comes to women. She can be super into you and not kiss you on the first date.
How do you know it's okay to initiate the romantic gestures? What are some of the signs or signals you should look out for?
Yeah. So, definitely throughout the date, if she becomes more and more flirtatious, or she's holding longer eye contact with you, she may actually initiate physical touch with you as well too. She might touch your arm when she's talking to you. She might talk about how much fun she's having with you. Those are all indications she's having a good time. At the end of the night, if she wants to kiss you, she will likely hold eye contact a little bit longer with you in that moment. She'll be smiling, she'll be warm and inviting. Now, there's always a level of ambiguity, right? None of us are mind readers. Otherwise, this would be a lot simpler. So if you are on the fence about it and you don't know, but you really want to kiss her in that moment, a lot of men are like, well, I don't want to ask for permission, right? That doesn't make me look masculine. It's not necessarily the asking for permission, but instead you can say, I really want to kiss you right now, right? That's still speaking from your desires versus going, can I kiss you right now? And it still allows her to say like, oh, that's so sweet, but maybe on the next date, or, I want to kiss you too, right? So either way, it gives her the opening to say what she's comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. What happens when the woman ghosts this man. This seems to be a common
Yeah,
problem at the moment for a lot of men.
sure.
What's going on
Yeah.
there?
Well, in both men and women, I think our society has become very avoidant of uncomfortable feelings, with especially with the internet and with the way that connections can be so like a drive-by, right? Like you connect with people and it's like you just go through and you connect with so many people, whether it be actual dating or just in your day-to-day lives, right? Connections move very quickly with our technology. And so, unfortunately, we also are in a society that doesn't promote the ability for someone to be with uncomfortable feelings and to have uncomfortable conversations, right? We aren't necessarily taught how to do that growing up, depending on how we were raised. And you don't always have role models for it. And so when somebody feels really uncomfortable about conflict or confrontation or letting somebody down, they can avoid the conversation altogether. And when that happens, you can see that as almost a blessing to you, because to be in a healthy relationship, you will have to have uncomfortable conversations. You will have moments of conflict. That doesn't mean fighting, it doesn't mean drama, right? But you will have points of contention between the two of you that you will have to talk through. And if you don't have the ability to face uncomfortable feelings, then it's going to be really, really hard to actually have the level of intimacy that, I know a lot of people listening to this desire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So with somebody ghosting you, they avoid their own uncomfortable feelings about themselves a lot of the times too. And so it can show a level of emotional maturity. I wouldn't want to blanket that to anybody who ghosts. Sometimes you just don't know what happened, right? And but it can be a sign that somebody doesn't allow themselves to own their entire emotional experience as a human, but rather they want to only be with the positive. I don't like to put positive and negative to it, but the comfortable emotions, right?
Yeah.
The ones we really love, the happiness, the joy, the excitement, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just it's the unknown, isn't it? When they're being ghosted. Was it something I did?
Yeah.
Did I say something wrong? Did I approach her in an inappropriate way? Did I fuck something up? And yeah, realistically, it's most likely a reflection of, again, we're speaking about women here. I know men do it as well, but it's a reflection of her own difficulties of processing her, as you said, uncomfortable feelings or emotions. And yeah, it is a blessing, not just in the sense of that this person would not be the right person to pursue a relationship with in anyway, but it also frees up time, energy, and space for you to find someone who is perhaps emotionally prepared and ready to take on a new relationship if that's what you're after. So
yes, if you choose to release that emotional time and energy. I see a lot of men who get stuck in the spiral of what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And you have to remember someone else's experience of you as a projection of their own stories.
Yeah.
So you only get to control so much of her experience with you because she has her own stories, her own limiting beliefs. And depending on what those are for her and her level of awareness around them, her projection of those onto you can create a different feeling than what you were hoping she would feel.
But then again, maybe the man did do something wrong.
Maybe
he has to take responsibility and ownership for that.
Absolutely, yes.
So sort of to ask you that question, what are some of the common fuck ups that men create in these dating or relationship scenarios that may cause a woman to ghost him or simply to dump him?
Sure. Not initiating on the date at all, right? Not asking her questions. Initiating, I don't mean just like physical touch, because I know we were just talking about that. This is initiating the dating process with her. So if you're not stepping into a leadership role in that and she ends up asking you all the questions, or maybe she just ends up talking about herself the whole time because you're not adding to the conversation. She may not feel that romantic connection with you because she's been on a date with herself at that point. Anything that you might say that's just condescending, right? Or rude. I mean, those are kind of obvious things, but if she notices that you aren't kind to the people around you, right? If you're nice to her, but not nice to the rest of the people around you, that might be a reason why she's like, this isn't a safe space to be. This isn't consistent, right? So women are very sensitive to consistency, and they want to see that there's consistency in you and like consistent behavior. So if you treat her one way and treat other people another way, she's going to sense that. She might not know what it is. She might just be like, wow, he seems like he's not nice to the people, serving us. But what it really is consistency, right? So it's that feeling of you're nice to the people you want something from. Other things that can happen on the date is if you talk about yourself the whole time, right? And don't ask her questions, just in the same way that if she's talking about herself all the time, there's an imbalance there. I would say there are definitely like nuances to this because everybody's looking for the person who fits them, right? So if she notices that there's inconsistencies between her values and yours and what you both are looking for, or she gets a sense that you might not be genuine in your pursuit, right? Or you have ulterior motives, she might ghost because of that as well too, where she's like, I don't know that I even want to engage with this right now. If she felt disrespected in any way, like I said, if you were rude or condescending in any way. It can also just be if she felt like she was just across the table with somebody who wasn't really engaging at all in the date and who wasn't feeling confident in himself to do that. And some women can recognize that as a lack of confidence, and hopefully she, sends you a text and was like, it was so great meeting you, you're so great, but I just didn't feel that romantic connection, right? That's usually what happens. If you're trying to please her the whole time, you're trying to impress her the whole time, then she doesn't feel that romantic connection because it feels like you've now put her, like you called it, on a pedestal. And, she wants to feel like you feel like her equal, not necessarily like equality. Like, I'm not getting into gender equality here. I'm talking about like two people across the table who can have a conversation at a similar level, right? That you were able to take things a little bit deeper with her, or also have the discernment to not go too far in the conversation as well too. Oversharing is another reason why she may have ghosted you, or why she just says there's no romantic connection. If she sees that you don't have any regulation around or discernment around who you share your experiences with, she doesn't feel special, right? You might only open up to a woman that you're really interested in, but she doesn't know that. She might think that you're doing that on every single date, and that you're just wanting your dates to be therapists or to, or therapy sessions versus actually getting to know her. So, oversharing, it's always important to ask yourself, am I truly trying to connect with her, or am I trying to throw it all out there so I'm rejected sooner than later? Because a lot of men have that fear around being rejected later on because they feel like they've gotten really intense feelings for somebody and then we're let down. So they're like, okay, well, I'm going to tell this woman all the things that the other woman didn't like about me to see if she'll actually like those things about me or not.
Mm-hmm.
But
I like that.
It's too soon for her to tell. So yeah, those are some things for sure that can either, create a ghosting scenario, and or just with a woman who is more communicative, for her to say, I just didn't really feel that romantic connection.
Yeah. For a lot of men, they're afraid to go all in. And I made this point last week. I was given a couple of tips or some truths about women and relationships. And one of them was that I feel that many men are actually not afraid of rejection. They're afraid of what may happen if she was to accept you. And you're having to go all in on this relationship with this woman, which comes with a massive risk. So I feel many men jeopardize that in themselves, maybe on a conscious or a subconscious level, in terms of withdrawing from the woman, in terms of their language, their energy, and they've missed potentially and unbelievable opportunity for someone special in their life. Is this something that you've come across with the men you work with?
Sure. Yeah, I think
that's sort of pulling away as such.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to clarify, you're talking about when they notice that the relationship is progressing forward, this woman's actually interested in them and they start to withdraw, correct?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. So this can come from a lot of different scenarios, but one of the main reasons why this can happen is if you have more avoidant tendencies, right? So if you look through the lens of attachment theory, attachment styles, what can happen is if there's a fear of intimacy, right? A fear of getting too close to somebody or being engulfed, meaning completely losing your freedom, then you can consciously desire a partnership and continue to subconsciously fear it. And your subconscious always wins. Our subconscious is there to protect us, right? That's how our brain is literally like, this is how we stay safe, or all of these different things that we do. And subconsciously, what can happen is by feeling someone get closer, it's triggering parts of you that are fearful of what that means, right? So this can be linked back as far to your caregivers and the way that you were raised and how you experienced love when you were growing up and what that love means to you. So yeah, absolutely, that can happen. And what happens is you're really into the woman and then she leans in and you start to take on all of this sense of responsibility, right? Oh my gosh, she actually likes me. This could lead to a relationship. Am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to let her down? Am I going to hurt her? Am I going to meet her expectations? Am I going to meet my expectations? Is she going to meet my expectations? Right? So all of these thoughts start to come up and you get way ahead of yourself. Just like someone with more anxious tendencies can get way ahead of themselves of, will this person leave me? Somebody with more avoidant tendencies can ask themselves, oh my gosh, is this actually right? Is this actually going to work out? And the two can rotate between each other as well too. But the desire for space comes from more of that avoidant tendency where you fear being too close to somebody because you think it means that you're not going to actually be in control of your own reality anymore. That every decision you make is going to be more for the other person than for yourself. But that's your own internal boundary that you need to create, right? She's not necessarily asking you to do that. That's a story that you have. And so it's really important to identify what are those stories that you have, where did they come from, and be able to actually heal that versus trying to recreate the same situation to prove yourself that you can do it differently this time, because that discomfort that you're feeling is not going to go away until you truly get to a place of understanding it and acceptance to be able to transcend it.
Yeah. Would you agree that it's important to establish a healthy relationship with yourself before you pursue with a relationship with someone else? Or
Sure.
Is that something you can grow together or go through together with a woman?
Sure.
Or both?
Well, we're never finished products, right? We're always works in progress. So waiting to be a finished project, right? Even treating yourself like a project first and foremost is not what this work is about. But if you're trying to be a finished product, right? By the time I have a certain body type, by the time I reach a certain income level, by the time I know this much about myself, by the time I feel this secure within myself, by the time then I could finally get the woman that I want. But what happens is we actually stunt our growth and we stunt our ability to experience that growth because relationships are our mirrors. And dating and putting yourself out there is going to allow you to learn things about yourself that you don't learn when you're in your own little single bubble, right? That's very protected. The triggers that come in and out of your life when it's just you, sure, you might have family that triggers you, you might have work that triggers you in certain ways, and you can work through those things. But the woman you're meant to be with, right, if you believe that, or the woman that you do end up with is going to trigger different things in you. And so what's important is before getting into a relationship is to identify what type of relationship do I want and with what type of woman, and then making sure you're an energetic match for that. Meaning, if you want a woman who's going to be self-aware, who's going to be able to communicate with you, who's going to want to work through things with you, who's going to want to listen to you and understand your needs and respect them as well too, you have to do that for yourself first. You have to learn how to communicate not only with other people, but with yourself, right? If you're talking to yourself really horribly, then if you have a woman who talks to you that same way, it's going to feel familiar. And you might end up making excuses for it or believing it even. So communicating with yourself, being emotionally available for yourself, allowing those uncomfortable feelings, growing from them and evolving from them, right? They're there to teach you something. That's going to allow you to then be able to have like healthy conflict in relationship as well too, and talk through those moments. But if you don't do the basics first of getting the clarity of who you are, what you want, and also understanding your own emotional like triggers and your own stories and limiting beliefs that you have, then you are more likely than not going to keep attracting women who are trying, like, who have certain behaviors, patterns to bring those triggers back up until you finally heal.
Mm-hmm.
So you will continue to relive the same dating patterns, and therefore you won't have that relationship that really fulfills you. You might find one, but it may or may not actually enhance your life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's brilliant. The reason I asked the question is that I feel there's a lot of men who listen to this, a lot of men who follow my content, who are starting on their own personal growth journey at quite a later stage of their life, maybe in their 30s or potentially in their 40s. These men are married with kids, and they attracted their wife, their woman, at a time in their life where they hadn't processed their trauma or their internal pain. So their frequency was quite low. And now they're beginning to raise the frequency, but as they raise their frequency, they're beginning to become disconnected from their wife or from their woman.
Right.
And potentially detach from her completely. So have you experienced this, or how can a man negotiate that with his wife to potentially maintain the relationship? Or if she's not willing to go with him on that journey, is it time to let go of her completely?
Well, I think letting go of something as committed as a marriage or a long-term relationship is something that you have to decide for yourself on what to do, right? Because you have to first learn how to trust yourself and your gut, right? So I work with my clients. I will give them direction when needed if I see something happening that needs direction. But the main thing that I do is I teach them how to trust themselves and how to listen to that inner voice and how to be able to navigate those situations and be confident in their decision making. And so in order to get to that place, though, especially in something like a marriage, I'm not married. So, but there's a level of complexity there where you want to do everything you can to possibly to invite that person into your level of growth and to where you are. And it's important as you do this, though, to release responsibility and not take ownership for their healing, right? You can't take responsibility for their healing. That is not going to lead to the relationship that you want ultimately. What you can do is guide that person into the opportunities to heal, right? Talking about your own experience, what you've been going through, how much you would love to share that with her, and it's up to her then to decide if she wants to meet you there or what it looks like for her. And, if you are in a relationship that doesn't feel good, it's creating a lot of stress in your life, it's something to take into consideration and to communicate through that and to make sure that you have a partner who's going to listen to you in the same way that you want to listen and understand her, right? A lot of the times when we're in a relationship, we don't hear each other. We hear what we want to hear, and then we forget we're on the same team. And we continue to act as if we either win or we lose as individuals. And so it's important that you do everything you can to get on that same team and to remember that you both want this, right? You both want to be in the relationship, and it's about making it cohesive for both of you. I would say there's caveats to this. Of course, if there's any sort of like emotional or physical abuse, right? I mean, that's something that you definitely want to take up with a trained professional around as well too, to understand what's going on in that situation and the best way to navigate it. So, something like that. I'm not a clinical psychologist or therapist. So I would definitely recommend, if that's something you're going through, to seek out help in that regard to understand what is happening there for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're getting pretty deep here.
I know. I can go there.
Yeah. No, it's good stuff. I think we missed a couple of steps though. So we were dating, and then we all of a sudden we're talking about a marriage breakup. So let's go back
I wanted to caveat it because I think
it is important.
It's really important to recognize that when you're married to somebody, it's a different level of complexity as dating, right? When you're dating, you want to understand how to qualify somebody for a great partnership. Mm-hmm. When you're in a committed relationship or a marriage, it's a different ballgame.
Do you see a massive difference between the men that you work with, those who've been married and those who haven't gone through that process yet, in terms of their approach with dating and relationships now at this stage of their life?
Sure. Yes and no. Of course, men who have never been married and or have never had children and want a family, have very different goals in dating as somebody who has maybe gone through a divorce and now they're trying to figure out dating and want to understand what they want. And they're getting to know themselves again. And they're getting to know what their desires are because maybe they didn't take ownership of their desires in their marriage. There's similarities between the two for sure when it comes to attachment styles, right? Or attachment tendencies. Usually what can happen though is a ending of a relationship, whether it be marriage or something else, will either exacerbate our current attachment tendencies and create a lot stronger of an emotional response to them, or it can even change them and alter them in different ways. What I see a lot of the times with men who have been in long-term relationships or marriages is sometimes they can appear to have avoidant tendencies, but in reality, they're avoiding the more like anxious feelings, the feelings of being really attached to somebody, of getting hurt again by not dating. So, a lot of the times they will take themselves out, right? And they don't want to put themselves back out there because they might not trust themselves, they might not trust women, etc. Now, for men who have never been in a long-term relationship, right, a lot of the hesitancy can be from, what does that even look like? What does that feel like? And so there can be some fears of getting it right or doing it wrong. And then they build it up so much because there's been so much time that then they hold themselves back from even experiencing what it is that they need to experience to become confident in that. Right. So it all, for anybody, whether it be if you've been in a long-term relationship, marriage or not, is looking at those thoughts and understanding what thoughts are truly holding you back from going after what you want and getting clarity over what that want is and why. Right? Are you seeking approval or are you desiring connection?
Mm-hmm. So, as you mentioned before, when it comes to dating, men do have interior motives and will want to bring it to the bedroom. Usually will want to bring it to the bedroom before the woman does. And how do you negotiate that in a healthy way?
Well, a lot of the times in relationship, it can be rare for both people to have the same timelines when it comes to physical intimacy, to commitment, and it comes down to communication around it. But 100%, whoever is the person who is not ready for physical intimacy, that is the boundary, right? That is their body and their choice. And what's important to recognize is a lot of women or a lot of people don't always want to engage in sex or having physical intimacy until they feel safe. And if she doesn't feel like she truly knows you, or that you haven't been consistent, or you're not communicating with her, or you're not opening up yourself, then an emotionally available woman is not going to feel safe having that level of intimacy with you, right? That's a very vulnerable place to put yourself in, especially as a woman. And, on the flip side, though, if a woman is using her sexuality in order to create more connection with you, right, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, that's also something to keep in mind. So for yourself, if you are looking for a long-term committed relationship, you may also want to consider at what point do you feel comfortable engaging in that with her, right? And what does that look like to you, and defining that for yourself? So, when anybody is using physical intimacy for their own, to either avoid emotional intimacy or just because that's their one priority, right? You want to make sure that you have aligned values when it comes to physical intimacy with someone before partaking in it, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So, another important thing to remember is with attachment theory and attachment styles, if someone has a very intense, anxious attachment style or anxious tendencies, then engaging in physical intimacy can exacerbate those feelings. And so what that can do is, like, let's say a woman you're dating has more anxious tendencies and she's great. She's open. She has such a big heart, right? She's just like there. And then you guys sleep together, and all of a sudden she wants more of your time. She wants more of your attention. Maybe she's not even saying anything, but you can feel it. Like, you feel her focus on you and you're like, oh my gosh, she's so into me now. What did I do? That is because women release hormones that actually bond them to the man during sex. So the same hormones they release during childbirth. So women then try to find safety from that by wanting more closeness, by wanting stability, maybe wanting to define the relationship. So if you're not ready for that, if you don't feel that bond with her yet, then it may not be time for you to do that. It can also be similarly where men actually they have a hormonal response that makes them want to disengage after physical intimacy. And if you don't have a bond with a woman, and let's say you even have more avoidant tendencies, you might start to pick out little flaws in her and question all the things that maybe it wouldn't work out because of. Maybe even compare her to an ex or other women, right? That's like the phantom ex sort of theory. And so it's important that you have gotten to a secure place with her where there's that emotional bond. And so you can process those feelings and maybe even communicate them to her, of just saying like, hey, I need a little space today. I'll talk to you tonight, and take that time to recenter yourself to be able to come back into the relationship. Now, if you do want to engage in more casual intimacy, it's important to be upfront about that. So if that's what you're looking for, then you want to look for somebody who's also looking for that as well too. And with online dating, it makes it a lot easier. People check the box.
That was my next question. You just opened it up there for me. It was
oh, perfect.
Because, as you mentioned, people often use physical connection to avoid emotional connection, and that was the first thing that came to mind. Is that what's happening with the hookup culture today?
Maybe. I think there's people are slower to commit right now in our society. We have a lot of options. We have more options than we've ever had with online dating, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time, right? You're able to have a wider pool of people you can meet. And so you meet people you wouldn't otherwise. And it allows you to, be able to find that emotionally available, healthy partner that you desire, that you feel good with, that you're attracted to. But at the same time, it also creates, right, like swipe culture, or what I like to call like shiny object syndrome, where it's like, oh, but maybe I could get better, but maybe I could get better, but maybe I could get better. And so it's important for yourself to ask yourself the tough questions, or have somebody who asks you the tough questions, to identify if you are really wanting casual, or are you fearing the level of intimacy that comes with something that's a little bit more serious or committed. So, I think it depends on age as well too. At a certain point, you're still figuring yourself out. Although I would say, I've seen so many like younger generations now start to develop their own, to engage in personal development a lot earlier. And it's like so amazing to see and really exciting. But, I would say that, of course, there are some times where people use physical intimacy to avoid emotional intimacy. But that is definitely something that if you're like hearing this and you're like, oh, maybe, I don't know. No, it's not me. Like you want to push it away. And it might be a question you would truly want to ask yourself. And it's okay, right? It's okay to just be honest with yourself in that moment and not feel the pressure to judge yourself around it. What? You have something to say to that?
I posted recently about the hookup culture, 3 reasons why it's creating difficulties in men's life, and I think there's more than 3 reasons, but it was the 3 that came to my mind first. Well, the sexual energy is number 1. That you know, your sexual energy is the most powerful energy you have, and that can be used to cultivate something of significance in your life, but instead you're wasting it on your next Tinder hookup date, and it becomes a very isolated and lonely place to be, because ultimately you may be seeking that company or that physical connection to, as you put it earlier, to numb the emotional pain that you feel from an early age. And at the same time, you're avoiding that deep level connection, because, as I mentioned earlier, it's not that you're afraid of the connection or the rejection, but it's afraid to be accepted by this person. And that's a lot more frightening for men than the potential rejection. And of course, then there's the ego at play, and the pride of an endless pursuit to sleep with as many women as possible so that you can feel good about yourself. And that's, again, an empty pursuit. And yeah, I know there's teenage years and there's men in their early 20s thinking, fuck off, Gavin, I'm having great fun here. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of young men as well who are getting on the personal development journey at an earlier age, and in my opinion will avoid a lot of these mistakes in later life. So it's a difficult one to sort of truly understand, but as I see it, there's more loss than gain from these continual hookups, and ultimately you could potentially lose yourself, because, as I said, it's an endless pursuit to numb a pain, or an endless pursuit just to feel good about yourself, that you're able to attract a certain woman, and you're just chasing and chasing and chasing, like a dog chasing the wheel of a car and never catches it. But if he did get his teeth stuck into it, it would completely fuck him up. So and that happens sometimes. Men do get into a lot of problems and trouble whenever there's sex involved with strangers. So
well, it's always disempowering if you're making decisions that abandon yourself, right? So always ask yourself before any decision in dating, is this going to strengthen or weaken my relationship with myself? Am I going to respect myself more or less? Truly, right? It might feel good to be like, yeah, like I got her and I got her and I got her. But when you sit with yourself at the end of the night, what does it actually feel like to have this lifestyle? And if you feel like it's not strengthening your relationship with yourself or what it is that you truly want, happiness, peace, serenity, love, acceptance, abundance, then that's important to acknowledge and to recognize for any decisions that you're making in dating.
Yeah, you've got a much nicer way to put it than I do. Stop fucking up, man. Stop fucking and stop fucking up. Be nice to yourself. You know, check in with yourself. Yeah. That's good. That's the balance we need. Yes.
No, and I think it is true. Like, it's important to be direct about, okay, these are some things that are not helping you in life, right? You've identified that you are not where you want to be. Let's look at why you're not there, right? But there's so much out there where I feel like men feel so much shame sometimes around this, and feel so much shame in general, that it's so important to me to like let them know that it's okay to be nice to yourself, right? Like, you can accomplish what you want to accomplish, and maybe even more when you start talking to yourself in a better way, right? That doesn't mean you're not straight with yourself, like honest with yourself, You don't need to beat yourself up over it, right? That's why a lot of the times we get into relationships with people who talk to us the way we talk to ourselves. And so it's just important to me, like in my own message that I put out there, and I want men to be able to embrace the fact that it's actually strength to be able to be nice to yourself, right? You don't need to beat yourself up to know that you're strong enough to overcome your own like self-destruction as well too.
Yeah. Self-compassion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough for a lot of men. Self-compassion.
It is.
Because they've all they've
for
ever
a lot
had
of
was
people.
self-criticism. Yeah, for a lot
Yes.
of people. Yeah, so
Yes.
so important though. Yeah, and you will avoid so many mistakes by being a bit more compassionate about yourself, and you will also understand that you deserve better when you're compassionate. You'll just understand that you may need help as well, and you'll be more likely to reach out for someone if you are struggling, because you know that you deserve much more than this. And if these good men want to reach out to you, Emily, where can they find you? Tell us all.
Absolutely. It's at Emily Freeman Coaching plus Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. So would love for you to follow. Instagram is where I'm definitely most active. You can also join my private community. So I'm sure it'll be linked in the show notes, where you can join my free Facebook group with a whole bunch of other like-minded men. You can also find me at emilyfreemancoaching.com, and super excited to welcome men who want to work with me in a multiple of different ways. So if this does call to you, then you can just use the link in my bio in my Instagram to learn more.
Brilliant. Thank you, Emily.
Awesome. You're so welcome.
This has been epic. Thank you for your time and energy.
Yes.
Until next time.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was super fun, and I very much appreciate your platform.
Likewise.
Awesome.